it's a quote where I think Quark and Garrick are sitting next to each other, and Quark offers him like a root beer, and Garrick goes, "Oh man, that's so like bubbly and happy, just like the Federation." And then Quark is like, "Yeah, but here's the thing, man. If you drink it enough, you start to like it, just like the Federation."
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Star Trek Discovery Recap FREQcast. I'm taking control of the ship back from Anita's rogue AI this week, but before I make an ill-advised jump into my own future, I decided to get a special guest in from the Mirror Universe to discuss this week's episode with me. Joining me on the bridge is Dr. Ali Mattu. Ali, how you doing?
I'm doing really good, like right now.
Oh my God.
I'm really excited.
Me too. Although I have to say, we'll get into it, but this episode ended and I was like, wait, what? No.
I know.
What?
I
no.
know.
You know, and so we got one episode left of the season.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. And you could not have told me during season 1 that I would ever be in this place emotionally with Discovery. But I was straight up like, no, I need more and I need it immediately. But before we get into that, I want to tell the people who you are. So you create, and I got this, I will tell the people, I went to your website to get an official bio, because if I'd had to write it myself, it would have been incoherent, much like what I'm about to deliver. And
you'd be like, Ali likes Star Trek and stuff.
Well, it was like, Ali likes Star Trek. Ali wrote a thesis on Star Trek. That's all I want to talk about. But no, let's talk about, the kind of the wider world of Ali. So you create entertaining, empowering, and educational mental health media. You are a cognitive behavioral therapist who helps kids and adults with anxiety disorders. I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit about anxiety and its presentation in the Star Trek universe, particularly Saru, who has been my boy.
Love him.
I've been so gratified with the way they develop that side of his character. And I have been, because of that, kind of disappointed with the way that's disappeared a bit, after his, in quotation marks, evolution. But we'll get to that. So you are a huge presence on YouTube, where you teach a global audience how to use psychological science to achieve their goals. You spark conversations about mental health through storytelling performances, school assemblies, and pop culture conventions. But again, most importantly, you wrote your thesis on Star Trek. Ali, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and about your history with Star Trek fandom.
Yeah, I think so much of my life, who I am right now, is thanks to Star Trek. A very long time ago, I used to be a kid who didn't really have any passions or interests. I sort of liked riding my bike to Burger King, and that was about
That's
it.
Valid.
That was my
As
my
a personality.
Yeah. There was like a 99-cent special on the Whopper that was like time limited, but that it never ended up being time limited. It just like ended up like sticking around forever. So I was trying to get like my all the value in out of that.
You wanted like the Burger King top brass to know that deal was appreciated.
Right. I guess I made it so because they never got rid of that. So one day my brother took me to go see a double feature. It was The Addams Family and Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
Wow.
And I saw that. I was like, whatever, Addams Family, I don't really care about this. And then I saw Star Trek, and the opening scene, George Takei playing Sulu, the Excelsior, there's this shockwave, all this stuff happens. I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I had seen Star Wars before, but for me, Star Wars was really scary as a kid because people are losing their limbs. There's all this like evil like emperor. There's like really dark stuff going on. But Star Trek, I felt this connection, like this is us in the future, and all sorts of people coming together, working these missions to like improve ourselves. and I loved it. I spent that whole ride home with my brother talking about this. And he's like, yo, that was Star Trek 6. Like, there's probably like 5 other movies. And I was like, that was Star Trek 6? I thought it was Star Trek VI. Like,
And it was little Ali's like galaxy brain, like, what?
Right.
This was, there's more of these.
I forget how old I was. I think it was like 3rd or 4th grade. But yeah, I didn't know Roman numerals. So my brother and I went to Blockbuster. We like rented all the Star Trek movies, and I devoured them. And we started watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. It was like in its 5th or 6th season, and I've been a fan ever since. And I wasn't a kid that was really into school, but I was always into Star Trek. And when I got to college, I took intro psych just by chance. And I was like, oh my God, here is a science that answers all those great questions that Star Trek raises about why we do what we do and how we can improve, and why do some cultures get along and others don't, and how can you work together as a team, all that stuff. I was like, this science has the answers for all those questions of Star Trek. So I feel like my whole life has been trying to like bring these worlds together, and that's a little bit of what I do.
That's amazing. I really wish Anita could have been on this episode, because one of the things that she continues to emphasize about her particular relationship with Star Trek and the appeal that it has for her, but this is, kind of a larger resonance with the franchise, is how fundamentally optimistic and hopeful it is.
Yes.
In distinction, in contrast to this very like grim, dark version of science fiction that is, kind of overwhelmingly our visual touch point for sci-fi in this current moment. There is something that, some would call, corny or kind of, too rosy or unrealistic about the hope for the future that Star Trek offers us. And I am so glad when I hear people, push back against that. Essentially like, what would it be like if we rigorously and, deliberately pursued the best parts of us? Where
Hell
could
yeah.
we be? Who could we be? What wonders await us if we embrace the better sides of our nature versus, sort of surrendering to the darkness, And I think as much as I love Star Wars, like you as a kid, there were times when I wrestled with it because I thought like, I'm worried about this. I'm so worried that good won't win. Like I think there's a reason why, like the dark side of the Force, like is such a compelling, kind of antagonistic force, because it represents like this fear, like what happens when evil is this kind of, overpowering force that you don't know how, like it seems as if there's no way in, over, or around it, Anyways, this is not the Star Wars podcast.
No, but it's like, the Star Wars to me it does the fantasy genre so well, those ideas of good and evil. And you and Anita are so right about science fiction, and how science fiction is so often these cautionary tales. Like I was watching the new Twilight Zone on CBS All Access because I'm paying for it, so I might as well watch like something else on the channel, right? And it reminds me of how different Star Trek is from most science fiction. Back when it originally came on, it was such a bold idea that, hey, folks, we're going to make it out of the 60s, out of like the mess we're in. And look, we're going to have people from like all around the world serving on this spaceship together and exploring space. That was such a bold idea in the 60s. And here we are again, where Star Trek Discovery, compared to a lot of science fiction that's out there, it's kind of the only one that is like a little optimistic. And that was honestly what I struggled with so much season 1 of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
Like I was so excited for Star Trek to be back on TV, the medium where it really thrives. And I'm one of those guys who loves all of Star Trek, and I'm bummed Anita's not here, but
Hmm.
I'm also really excited to talk to you about how Star Trek Deep Space Nine is the best Star
Yo,
Trek out
yo,
there, right?
Taylor, stop the episode right here. We're done. We're
Yeah.
done.
Like every Star Trek has so much to offer, and I even love the Kelvin timeline movies. Like
Yeah.
I'll defend like all of them. I think there's cool stuff happening in all of them. There's some messed up stuff too, like how do you turn Khan into like the whitest white guy
Yo,
in the world? But
you
that's
should have
a
been on this
whole.
podcast from the beginning. Every time we have a special guest on, I'm like, we needed this viewpoint from episode one.
We're like the admirals that come in every now and then, and like you're like, whoa, what's the story with that admiral? And then they're gone by the end of the episode.
That's another
That's what I
reason why
feel like,
Anita needs to be here, because I need you as Admiral to come in and just kind of like yank her uniform back a little bit and be like, you've gone rogue, you know? Like, I'm not sure that you've been offering the kind of leadership this crew needs.
Well, like I love and defend every Star Trek series and movie. And Star Trek season one was or Star Trek Discovery season one was such a struggle for me because I love the diversity of the cast.
Yeah.
I love the diversity of the production teams. I love the look and feel and the reinvention. And I'm not one of those people who are like, well, the holograms and canon and all of that. Like, I'm willing to like let that go. But what really bothered me was that optimism and social commentary I thought was a little lacking. Like I saw the optimism with just like the diversity and how much we got so used to such amazing diversity on screen. At the same time, like where was the shining hope that we needed in a Star Trek series like that? I thought was less there. And, I think season two's been a little bit better. So
I agree. I
that's
agree.
where
I
I'm
think,
at.
I have not bothered to check this, so I could be completely incorrect in this supposition. But I have this sort of sense that both narratively but also visually, the show is much lighter this season. I think there was, because of the influence of shows like Battlestar Galactica, there's this, like very dark, heavy look
Right.
to a lot of
Yeah.
sci-fi media right now. And I think there was a deliberate lightening of tone and look. And I think, part of this has to have been because of fan reaction to the first season, which there was much to celebrate. Like you say, like, the diversity and just the renewal of, Star Trek on our screens. But nevertheless, it didn't feel like Star Trek. And it's not just that the bridge looks different or the uniforms look different, but that it is impossible to imagine that the Starfleet that we get, ostensibly 10 years later, with Kirk humming the Enterprise, would have come from the version of Starfleet and the Federation that we see in Discovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where was the disconnect? Whatever. We have gone so far beyond the basic intro, but we're going to circle back to so much of this. But just real quick, before we launch into this week's episode, you say that you got mad love for all Star Trek, but do you have a favorite series and a favorite character?
Oh man, I have a very hard time between the Next Generation and DS9 because to me, like I will say, if it's like if you're holding a phaser to my head and it's set to vaporize, and you're like, Ollie, what is your favorite Star Trek series? I'm going to tell you Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm. That is the
However,
correct answer. Okay.
It is the correct answer. There is no other answer. Right? Like I'm talking families. I'm talking relationships. I'm talking In the Pale Moonlight, one of the top 5 episodes of Star Trek ever.
Yeah.
I'm talking side characters that become real characters. I'm talking taking a species I hated, the Ferengi, and fleshing them out and making them 3-dimensional. I'm talking like there's like a labor union episode. There's so much amazing stuff. I'm talking serialized TV before we had the golden age of TV. and the specials or the special effects hold up way better than Babylon 5 did.
Oh God.
But here's the thing, Ebony. Like I don't think you can have DS9 without TNG. DS9 is so much like, all right, here's your utopia, but these are the costs of it.
Right.
And like these are the things that are happening, and these are some of the darker sides of the Federation. And when they introduced Section 31, that was such a such a big idea to me, and it was the first time where I started to see the Federation as maybe not all good. And I started to see some of the darker, more imperialistic, more nefarious sides of it, which makes you question, can you ever have this utopia? So it's hard for me to uncouple DS9 from TNG. I can't really do it in my mind because I feel like they're two sides of the same coin.
I love it. I absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right about DS9 asking hard questions of its foundational, mythos in a way that could only have happened because of the work that TNG has put in. I think when we talk about like the optimism of Star Trek, at its best, it is not a blind optimism, and it does ask us what is required to for us to have the kind of society that we want. And I think DS9 really goes into the tall grass with that.
Yes,
and forces us to kind of reckon with it, and also reckon with the kind of like very superficial, but ultimately toothless kind of like white liberalism that doesn't sort of acknowledge the kind of military arm that supports the structure of its society, right? Like DS9 is like, no, you will deal with this. It is there are armies that make this possible, and you need to decide if you're willing to live with that. So yeah.
I love it. And it's got you just reminded me of my most favorite quote ever from Star Trek. It's a quote where I think Quark and Garak are sitting next to each other, and Quark offers him like a root beer, and Garak goes, "Oh man, that's so like bubbly and happy, just like the Federation." And then Quark is like, "Yeah, but here's the thing, man. If you drink it enough, you start to like it, just like the Federation."
Yeah.
And it gets to like the cultural hegemony of the Federation and all of that sort of stuff. Oh man, I could go on and on. But like, I know Anita's tried it. And it didn't really click. And here's the thing, like the first two seasons, they are really slow. I only started watching Deep Space Nine because Worf came aboard. And then I sort of went back and watched all the other episodes. And but the first few seasons are like really slow.
Yeah, I appreciate a good villain. And so I think the villains that we get, the antagonists that we get in DS9 are some of the best in Star Trek. So I was really drawn to those. I'm gonna keep you on this episode. I'm gonna have to break it up into 6 pieces because it's gonna be 40 hours long. Let us get to this week's episode. Again, This is the penultimate episode of Discovery's 2nd season, Such Sweet Sorrow. The official show summary states, when the USS Discovery's crucial mission does not go according to plan, Burnham realizes what must ultimately be done. The crew prepares for the battle of a lifetime as Leland's control ships get closer. Ali, let's get into it. What did you think of this week's episode?
They talk about like a galactic rubber band, right? And that's what this episode felt like to me. Like I was being tossed back and forth. Like we're on the Discovery, we're on the Enterprise, we're on the Discovery. It felt like it was there was so much going on, and it was hard for me to keep up. But it was such a ultimate Discovery episode to me because there were so many things I love, so many things that frustrated me, so many things that didn't make any sense at all, and yet I'm so excited for next week. Like,
Yes.
despite all of that, I'm so excited.
You're absolutely right. Like, this is what Discovery does. My list of damn, you got me moments is just as long as the highly illogical moments, right?
Totally.
And at the end, I'm like, yes, I will be back in my seat. I will be back on my couch next Thursday at 5:30 Pacific time to find out how this all wraps up. One of the things that I have talked about from the beginning, from the beginning of Discovery is I don't trust that the writers are going to get me to a place where it makes sense that I will never have heard that Spock had a foster sister, right? Like, no matter what they do, I do not see how they can tie that bow. And yet, by this point in season 2, episode 13, I'm like, you know what? Those bastards may do it. They may find a way to do it. I've invested them with a little bit of trust, just enough trust that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to let this cook a little bit longer, because the things that the show does well, it does so well, right? Like, you cannot fault the visual style of this show.
Oh, no,
it is phenomenal.
It's beautiful. It's
to look
beautiful.
at, right? Like the look of the future tech, the way the characters look. How dope did the Enterprise look?
The bridge of the, oh my gosh. I was losing it when so like before we got on Enterprise, there were those really weird like space docking things that to me look like Lego Bionics or something that were unraveling.
I know that you can't question the science, too deep, but I was like, okay, how do those because it was like, like train tracks,
right,
like Lincoln Logs, like come on,
they like roll out. Totally, it makes no sense. Like, I'm like that doesn't make sense. I was like, that's so Discovery, but whatever. And then they're like going through, and you see Pike walk through it, which looks super cool. And then they're on the Enterprise, and immediately you start hearing the original series door sounds.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh shit. Mm-hmm. He says deck 1. I'm like, and he's holding on to the turbo lift like those old things, right? And I'm like, holy shit, we're about to see the bridge. Yeah. And then we got to the bridge, and I lost it. Ebony, I lost it. I was about to cry. I'm like, this is it, and it's gorgeous, and it's beautiful, and I love it. And then there were like two women at the con, and this is what I love so much about Discovery. It like was no big deal.
Exactly.
And I think one of them was number 1, and the other one I think was named Amir. And I'm like, I love it. I love it.
Discovery has no shortage of fierce females that populate its universe, and I am so here for it. Although it does make me wonder, okay, what happened to this bridge who like everybody left apparently when Kirk took over? Like it was a complete switch up, but I can see people being, real loyal to Pike. But I so appreciate, and this goes back to a bit about last week's episode when we see, future Pike in his Rooter scooter after he's had his accident, like the time and the care that they have taken to make sure that visually we know what's being referenced. And yet to update it, to bring it into the now. With such respect, but such consummate skill. I was incredibly impressed with it. And also the interplay between the crew of the Discovery when they come over in their uniforms versus the old school Enterprise uniforms, right? It just looked right. I've been so worried. I've been holding my breath thinking when this moment comes, even though we've seen number 1 before in her uniform, but when this moment comes where we see more of the crew from the Enterprise, it's going to be jarring. It has to be jarring. How could it not look jarring, if it looks faithful to the original series? And yet they managed to do it.
They totally managed to do it. So that sounds like you were buying the bridge too, because I'm sure there's some people that are going to be like, why wasn't it the official bridge? Like, why didn't it look like the USS Defiant bridge in Star Trek Enterprise? But I was all in on it, on the refreshing of the look, because like there were some pieces that looked just like the original, like the captain's chair was like, it looked like Kirk's chair. But it was like a modern take on it. But it sounds like you were on board with that.
Oh, absolutely. Like I I have to take some ibuprofen. I did the fist punch so many times for this episode. When I saw the Enterprise, when Saru finally gets acknowledged, like he's gonna get to be the captain again.
Yeah.
You know, like just those like, damn, you got me moments. That was a moment.
Yeah.
That got me. Similarly, okay. As much as I try and hide it, it is a fact that I am a sucker for real human emotion. And you cannot beat Star Trek when it comes to people who love and respect each other, demonstrating that love and respect. So when we got eyes up for Burnham and then eyes up for Pike, what are you doing to me, Star Trek? Why are you wringing my heart out, making me cry these bitter tears? I have now started to feel for these people, and I was not ready.
Yeah. There were some really beautiful moments like that. Like I love one of the things that I've really loved about Captain Pike's character here in Discovery, as well as the Star Trek Kelvin timeline movies, the J.J. Abrams movies. You get the feeling that he really believes in the purpose and mission of Starfleet. Like this is his everything. And in those small moments of duty and respect and to each other, and that idea of service, and we salute you, what you are doing for this greater cause and how you're serving this greater cause. I lose it. It takes me back to Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, and Spock sacrificing himself. It takes me to Measure of a Man and Picard like standing up for Data. It takes me back to like all these moments. It takes me back to like Cisco, how much he is distraught over all the soldiers that are dying in the Dominion War, and like Janeway, like everything she's doing to try to get her crew back. I feel all those feelings. Like, to quote Tilly, I love feeling feelings just like you. And I was feeling all of them in those two moments.
The heroics, the self-sacrifice, when Jet, who we just met this season, says, get the hell out of here. Okay, nothing gets me more than like the kind of gruff character revealing, I'm doing it for you. Like, yes, I will make this sacrifice for the greater good, but also because, I have very human connections with you people. Get you crazy kids, get out of here,
And as much as Stamets annoys me, him saying, I still don't like you, was such a great little moment between them. Stamets, Jet brings out the best in Stamets, I think.
Yes.
Like,
I absolutely agree.
Together.
I absolutely agree. I have really loved the way that we've been getting more humanizing character notes in this second season. Obviously, Tilly, Saru, etc. But I still struggle a bit with Stamets because it doesn't ring well for me. It doesn't fire on all cylinders for me personally. I know that there are some people who absolutely love him. The moments when I do love him are moments when it kind of the snark, which is a term that kept appearing in this episode. And I was like, okay, y'all, you could have taken another pass on this week's script. But the moments when like the veil of snark sort of drops, and he doesn't have to be kind of that bitchy character, that's when I love him most.
Totally.
That moment with him and Hugh, he says, like forward motion, that's the answer. I was brutalized by that scene. Again, Star Trek, what are you doing to me?
Yeah, it was, I think my problem with Stamets has been just Anthony Rapp is an amazing actor who I absolutely love. And I think he's playing a character that just is so against his type. Like,
maybe that's it.
It just doesn't fit for me. I just don't see it. And it just, in those more tender humans, I see more of Anthony Rapp coming out. And I don't know. So, but that's one of the scene you just described it's part of the problem for me with this episode is I didn't really like the pacing. Like it felt like there's a ton of action happening, and then there's this pause for these moments that seem to drag on a little too long. Like Hugh and Stamets, that's great. These are two characters we're invested in. But then you get to the end, and it's like that writing letters to our family and our friends like montage, which totally just slowed down the whole pace of the episode. And I just wasn't really buying it. Like I could have taken one or two of those, or maybe just give us Saru. You know, a character that like you were mentioning earlier has had this beautiful arc. Like, just give us him. We don't have to give us like all the people who are sticking around, writing to people we've never met at all. So that part didn't really work for me.
It worked for me purely because I was waiting to see who else was going to be revealed to be queer. And so I was like I'm always here to find out that there's more gays. And so I'm like, all right, who else is going to be writing to their partner? You know, so I was listening for that specifically. But yes, like the point has been made when, when we see Saru leave his message for Sarana, and then we get, Paul, and we got Owosakun, and we got Detmer. I was like, okay, enough, because I have not yet invested enough emotional energy in these other characters. I love them, but this doesn't yet mean anything to me. Exactly. But speaking of pacing, I absolutely agree with you that as much as they tried to tell us that there was a sense of urgency to what they were doing, I felt none of it. I felt totally no urgency whatsoever. And I could not determine how much time had elapsed and how much time they had. And so at one point, I could be wrong here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but at one point, don't they say, like, Control will be here in an hour?
Yeah.
And then they have a meeting. Okay. They have a meeting and then they decide, okay, we're going to build the time suit. We don't know what we're doing. This is like radically new technology we're still coming to grips with. We don't have the raw materials. We don't know how to power the suit. We have an hour. So, okay, first of all, you have a meeting. So that took 20 minutes because no one was on time for that meeting, right? And then it's like, turn off your phones, whatever. So now you got 40 minutes and you're going to build a time suit you don't understand, but you're going to put together in that amount of time. It just felt like you're asking for me to forget a lot.
They also have to charge the time crystal, and that thing takes it's like more than like, an iPhone to charge. It takes like a long time,
Exactly. Also, so we start the episode assuming that the Discovery is going to be, they're going to self-destruct, right? So everyone is evacuating from from Discovery to Enterprise, but we're seeing all this happen, but we're hearing Michael leave a very relaxed sounding log. And I'm like, when are you leaving this fucking log?
Oh my gosh.
Shouldn't you be hurrying to get shit to do? Like, you want to make a recording of this? Absolutely. But it should sound rushed. You should be out of breath. You should be packing shit. You should be doing what's going on. Like, when are you taking these quiet moments to reflect, Michael? You can save this for when you're actually on the fucking Enterprise.
Ebony, this is one of my highly illogicals. I hate Burnham's logs. I hate them.
They're terrible. Yeah.
They're terrible. Okay, so like you both have talked about how Michael Burnham doesn't really get the best lines all the time, but like, because our lead is such a great actress, she can sell them, especially against like other actors. But with a captain or with Burnham's logs, we don't see her face, we don't see the nonverbals. So all we're left with is this dialogue that just always sounds like bad. Like I took note of it. She said, "This is actually happening, and yet somehow I can't believe it. I look in the mirror and can hardly recognize myself anymore." Like, what?
I'll tell you what it is. It is one step up from, what's her name, from Sex and the City.
Yeah.
you know?
Oh yeah,
You remember
totally.
how it would be like, and so I have to ask myself, does 2 + 2 really equal 4? You're like, what the fuck?
Right, right. No, totally, totally. I never buy her logs. I hate listening to her logs. I'm like, stop writing logs. But you're totally
Yeah.
right. Like the that felt totally off. And like, so they connect these like toys to like walk over to each ship. Why aren't they like just beaming people over too? Like,
Okay,
right?
listen, can we get into it? Yes. This is
Yeah.
whenever there are like ship to ship or ship to station maneuverings, I'm always like, why don't you just transport over there?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe I have missed it, but it is not, I don't understand there to be a limit to the number of, transportations you can do. So why not just beam people over in groups?
Right.
It seems to me that strategically having big Lego hallways from one ship or one building to another just seems incredibly dangerous and incredibly unstable.
They should be using everything. Like, apparently both ships have just millions of shuttlecraft. So
Yeah.
they should be just sending the shuttlecraft, using the transporters, using the corridors, just like you're like evacuating, I don't know, hundreds of people. Use everything you've got.
Yeah.
So that just didn't really make sense. Like if it's supposed to be that intense, like if Section 31 is coming, like do everything you got to get everyone over to the Enterprise. And also like someone should probably test out the self-destruct system before you just completely leave the ship, because for many episodes now, we've known that the sphere data is trying to like stay alive. So like, why didn't anyone think like, oh, maybe, the sphere data has tapped into the self-destruct systems and might want to try to keep itself alive?
Yeah. Again, if you start asking too many questions,
Yeah,
then
it
you
all
have to ask all of
right.
the questions.
Right,
And there
right.
are a lot because here's another one for you. At one point when she's with Sarek and Amanda. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Item the first. How easily are people able to travel to Discovery when the plot calls for it, and yet they're too far away if it doesn't work for the plot?
That
Where the fuck were Sark
made
and Amanda? Presumably on Vulcan.
that
How did
made
they
no
get there so quickly? Again, I thought they just had an hour.
I
But
was
during
so right. It's a long.
are they caravanning? Why are y'all always around?
So okay, so I thought I had an explanation for the hour, but now you just poked another hole in it. So my idea was they had an hour at wherever they were before, but then
Okay.
but then Discovery jumps to where that new signal is
Right.
by the Queen's planet. So I think like they just jumped super far away, and Enterprise is warping there, going like super slow, and so like the hour became more time, I think. But here's where it all falls apart, because if the Discovery jumped to this other planet, how the hell did Sarek and Amanda get there so quick and like beat all of Section 31?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense at all. And another thing that doesn't make any sense, like they don't have subspace communication. They've got ship to
Right.
ship. They make a note of that. So why are all those people sending letters that they know no one's ever going to receive, because subspace
This is another question that I have. Like, what are you doing with those things? I had to laugh though when the crew initially evacuates from Discovery to Enterprise. We see a little bit of some, get up and go in the corridors. And there's the one crew member who runs by with his plant, and I appreciated that. And I wish it had remained just that one guy who's like, I'm not leaving my fucking plant. But then we see Tilly get her stuff, and we get Saru bringing Sarana's knife. So that was amazing. But I was confused throughout as to who came back to Discovery,
right.
how many of them were staying, how they were communicating with the crew of the Enterprise, and also if Sarek was able to determine through his Katra connection with Michael that, she's in orbit around Zahia or wherever they were at that point. Could he not also intuit, yo, some bad shit's going down. I should let the rest of Starfleet know. Where the hell is the rest of Starfleet? Right.
Oh, yeah.
Like, suddenly you don't know where all these Section 31 ships are. No one else has gone looking for these Joes.
And he's a real bigwig in Starfleet. Yeah. In the Federation, this guy's got like a lot of clout. He should have brought just an entire fleet with him, not this like rinky-dink shuttlecraft that he took.
Yeah, essentially, he was just like, I'm going to bring Ma and the Winnebago when I say goodbye to her kid, who's going off to college or whatever. And I'm like, you should have brought some backup. I mean, you knew something bad was going down. Where's the cavalry?
There is one thing I loved about seeing them, and that's the Vulcan music, that the score that was playing with them. I'm a sucker for Vulcan mysticism. I'm a sucker for all the scores that accompany Spock throughout all versions of Star Trek, and I really love that. The string instruments, it just brought back all the feelings of everything I love about Spock and Vulcans and how cool they are. So I did like that, but it doesn't make sense when you think about it.
Let me ask you this. So if you've listened to the podcast, then you know that Anita is pretty steadfast about the fact that she's probably not ever going to dip her toes into the original series. She may pick up an episode here or there, but she has no history with it and does not plan on developing a history with it. But speaking as someone who has got mad love for all of the series and knows the original series, what are your thoughts on this version of Spock? And I mean, you can talk also about, kind of other touchstones from the original series, so Sarek, Amanda, Harry Mudd, whatever. But starting with Spock, like, what do you think about Ethan Peck's, embodiment of Spock? Have you been digging it? Are you feeling like, yeah, this feels like, an earlier Spock. I can vibe with this, or is it feeling, I don't know, not quite there for you?
I was super cautious about this after seeing his beard in the right, like the stills that they released before the season premiered. I was
he still looks like a Munchie Chi. What is up?
Yeah, I know, totally. It just like I could be down with the beard, but it needs to be groomed a little. Like he needs. Yes. It seems so illogical to me that he would grow this beard and not groom it at all. Like that doesn't make any sense. The Vulcans
Where are the lines?
All about
where are
grooming.
The angles?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right, exactly. That like Vulcans are gonna have some super angled beards. Like I'm not getting it. At the same time, his voice. Oh my gosh! I every time he says like a word, it has that otherworldly element.
Yes.
That Leonard Nimoy had such distinct features, and I think here Ethan Peck has just the voice just captures that otherworldly feeling. His clothing. Oh my God! Like he had did he have like a leather jacket in the episode?
He did.
Right. It's so on point, and I think the character. I've really enjoyed this interpretation. Like I can see him in this place, and I don't have the problem of not buying that he never mentioned a sister because, he never mentioned a brother until Star Trek 5.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. And let me also say that in that moment with Sarek, Amanda, and Michael, when they were saying their goodbyes, Michael says, you had a son and you brought a daughter into the family. And I was like, 2 sons. He has 2 sons.
Right.
So like everyone, we have all just apparently agreed that he did not exist. And I will not have it. So
we know this family has a hard time talking about their feelings. Who knows how many siblings Spock has? Maybe Spock has maybe he's got 10 brothers and sisters.
I would not be surprised if Sarek had got around before he married Amanda.
I could totally see it.
And I could also see him playing it close to the vest. But there is a part of me that says, this would have come out. And also, I get that, that this is a new show, and you're
Yeah.
doing, a prequel. So there's some things that we just have to kind of hand wave away. So I know it doesn't sound like it, listeners, but I am willing to accept that Spock had a foster sister who he was incredibly close to and then never speaks of again. Okay, I have accepted that.
Well, so
But now that we know about Cybok, every time someone doesn't mention that Spock had another sibling, it does drive me apeshit.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense, and I'm still hoping we might see Cybok at some point, but I'm not holding my breath. He's another bearded Vulcan, so like maybe I don't know. But so one thing I want to ask you about with Spock, because I got some thoughts, but I want to hear from you. You and Anita have talked about how like disability is represented in Spock and in Enterprise, and like some of the problematic nature of like, it gives him this power, blah blah blah. Like I've got thoughts about how mental illness and mental health is represented here in Discovery.
I would love to hear all of those thoughts. I've been very open about the way that Saru's struggles with anxiety are so affirming for me as a person who, has just overwhelming anxiety 170% of the day. And so I have loved, humanizing is the wrong word, obviously, but I loved the way that they made that such an integral part of his character. And it felt so authentic to the way that anxiety can manifest itself in physical feelings, It just felt very empathetic and smart and a very compassionate take, which is one of the reasons why I was so disappointed that we started to move away. And I am really hoping that as brave as Saru has always been, his courage and his bravery has never been of the martial sort. And so as great as it would be to see like badass Saru kicking ass using Serana's knife to like gut something, I also never want that for that character. He has a different kind of strength. And so, I love that we get that representation in the show. I was really, I'm always gratified when we learn that someone has not a secret disability or an invisible disability necessarily, but that they have something and that they have found a way to live with it and thrive with it. So, I was accepting of the fact that we're just learning that Spock has Latak Tarai, which is a kind of Vulcan form of dyslexia, right? Yeah. I love that we saw that crew member who's a wheelchair user in the background of that one scene. But nevertheless, in the same way that, I'm blanking on her name now, but the queen from Zahia, right? In the way that the queen, to me, again, hit me up at Ebony Aster if you think I'm full of shit here, but that she is clearly modeled on Asian Pacific Islander kind of model, right? Both with the facial tattoos and her name, but we never get kind of the, I want to say, real version of that character. We get, a kind of metaphorical version of that culture and of that ethnicity. Sometimes Discovery wants to throw depictions of mental illness or disability into the mix, and they are kind of totems. They are not real characters.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I agree with you 100% here. I love Saru so much because he seemed so relatable to anyone who has experienced anxiety in a way that can impact your life, or love someone, know someone who's experienced anxiety in that way. And I really did not like that transformation evolution episode, especially like the torpedoes he launched out of his shoulders. That just seems so bizarre. And like how does that emerge from an evolution perspective? I don't know. I mean, I guess it does. There's probably weirder things in nature, but so that's been a little bit of a bummer, because it just seems like all aspects of his anxiety have just been eliminated out of his life. The things that I've found like more problematic, and I'm going to say that this is true for almost every Star Trek series, is mental health has been done, or mental health treatment has been done so poorly. Like, it's the 23rd century here, 24th century for TNG era, and it seems like we're still stuck in like therapy as it existed in the early 1900s. I just don't like Deanna Troi. I love her.
God.
Like, she was a crappy therapist.
Yes.
There's like this episode where she's trying to teach Barclay plexing, this like tapping the back of your ear technique. And I'm just like, what the hell are you doing? It never really worked for me. And in season 1, they ground Tyler because he has PTSD. Yeah. And it's just done in a way that seems like it's so invalidating to anyone who would ever get help and need support, that they just like rip away everything that gives him meaning and a sense of purpose. And it sort of reaffirms every fear I think anyone in the armed forces would have about getting treatment. And I don't know, Starfleet is a quote peacekeeping armada, but it's basically armed forces meets exploration and science, like however that works. So I didn't like that, and I really didn't like Spock's the way they showed a mental health facility, and I was excited to see that. I thought that we might have a whole episode where we get to see like a mental health hospital in the 23rd century, and what is that like, and like what amazing advances have they made in mental health. And it turns out
it's just bedlam.
Yeah. What the hell? Like, we have dermal regenerators and medical tricorders, and you can just like refuse any cellular damage in someone's body. But like we're basically straitjackets and locking someone up and not giving them a razor so they grow out this disgusting hipster beard. Like that's mental health care on Star Trek Discovery, and it doesn't get much better as time goes on in Star Trek. So that's always annoyed me.
Yeah, I think you would be forgiven as a viewer for thinking that Deanna Troi as ship's counselor was in fact the only counselor available on that ship, right? Which is wildly irresponsible. Right. But also, there's definitely a sense that all of the shows have, that mental health, like, I don't want to use mental stability is not what I mean to say, but a certain measure of sort of like standardized, like mental health is achievable, and that it has been achieved, and that this is something that has been solved in the same way that like the common cold has been cured, right? And so occasionally you have, characters who have, emotional outbursts. You have characters like Barclay or Saru, who need the intervention of a mental health professional, but that they are essentially outliers. Everyone else is doing just fine. And like, this makes it's incredibly irresponsible to suggest that that's the case. And if you are going to suggest that, then you need to demonstrate to us the ways in which that has happened.
Yes, yeah, dude. And flesh it out, like what happened in TNG with Geordi. I think Geordi is really a well-developed character. You really see now he's got. I think you and Anita talked about all the messed up episodes of that featured Geordi and women. Like those episodes are really like, why are you obsessed with this hologram? Like this is like messed up stuff. But
it is. It's fucked up, and it's fucked up that like the black male character. Right.
Yeah. And it's like Harry Kim on Voyager, like, oh no, the Asian male can't talk to any women, like, oh whoa, stereotype, like he just wants to play his clarinet and he misses his parents so much. Beautiful son, model minority, but like Geordi as a representation of his disability with blindness and what the visor means to him, what he can do what he struggles with, his arc with that is pretty cool. A little bummed that he got those implants in First Contact.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think LeVar Burton just got tired of wearing that visor.
Yeah.
He's like, if you want me in the movies, like, get rid of the visor.
Right.
So I'd like to see a little bit more of that. And no Star Trek series has really done that well. Voyager, they're like all the way on the other side of the galaxy, and like mental health like pretty rarely comes up. So it's just kind of, I was very hopeful with Spock's character that would get fleshed out, and I thought that was going to be really interesting. And it just turns out that like Section 31 was like setting him up. Like, okay. And then like his mind is magically fixed in a very cool episode that really rocked my world, and at the same time just kind of like brought a magic solution to a mental health problem, which I don't know. Star Trek can do a little bit better.
It absolutely could. And it is disappointing because I think, again, as someone who lives with anxiety and who is very happily, very gratefully medicated for anxiety, the fact that I do better on a certain day does not mean that the behaviors and the coping mechanisms that I have developed for my bad periods have gone away. I have lived my life in a certain way dealing with my anxiety. And so even if through some, Deus Ex Machina, my anxiety disappeared, the way that I live my life and exist in the world will not change overnight.
Right.
It will not simply disappear. And it is absolutely disappeared from Saru's story. In the latter half of the season, it has absolutely disappeared from Spock's story. It has been hand waved away in a way that is forced, and it is ultimately false.
And Star Trek Discovery still gives me some hope because Hugh and Admiral Cornwall, is that her last name? I feel like I don't remember anyone's name on Star Trek Discovery except for Michael Burnham, Saru, and Captain Pike.
That's okay.
I think it's Admiral Cornwall. Anyways.
That sounds right. And now that you put me on the spot, I'm like, oh my God, is that it?
The Admiral. Let's go with that. I lost my mind when I found out that she was a psychologist. As a psychologist myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, like we too in the mental health field can move up to the rank of command and then admiral. Like, I think that's amazing that Starfleet does value all professions and gives all professions a rank up, even those in healthcare. We saw that a little bit in Next Generation where Deanna Troi takes the bridge test, but it's cool to see that here as an admiral. And Hugh, I don't get the sense that they're just completely like tying up his story and the trauma that he's gone through. I think they're sort of leaving it there. And I love that there was this little mini therapy session that happened between him and the Admiral. I thought that was kind of cool. I wanted a little bit more. And I'm hopeful that they continue to flesh that out with Hugh and they give it time. They don't try to just like wrap it up, because trauma, like anxiety, like everything you're talking about, these are things that impact your daily life for your life. Like, these are things that are part of who you are. Yeah.
To go back to what I was saying near the top of the show, I cannot believe that I have reached this point with Discovery. I was ready to not necessarily write it off, but it was a hate watch in a lot of ways throughout the first season. Like, I've rolled my eyes a lot. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what? You've given me just enough for me to trust that you can do this better. I believe you have the potential to be better, and I think you want to be better. And so, you know what? I'm not going to send you to detention. I'm not going to expel you from school. I'm going to take the time to, give you that extra attention, Discovery, because in season 3, I really think you're gonna blast.
Ebony, isn't that the story of Star Trek, of humanity, of hope, of getting better, of knowing that that you can grow, you can change, you can improve.
On that note, Ali, this has been an amazing episode. I want to talk to you every week.
Oh my God.
I'm so glad that Anita arranged this. Because y'all know, like, I don't go out of my way to meet new people. So left to my own devices, I absolutely would have been chicken squawking into the mic by myself for this episode. Anita took me gently by the hand and was like, there's someone amazing. We can get on the show. I've had the best time. I absolutely want you to come back and not just confirm to Anita that DS9 is the best Star Trek, but also just talk about everything. It was fantastic having you on.
So much stuff we didn't get to. We didn't talk about Section 31. We didn't talk about, like, are they the Borg? Is that what's happening here?
This is my theory. Yeah, right? Like we see the nanobots, like, yes, this is absolutely it's the origin of the Borg. This is what we're seeing here.
Right? That's what, there's like a lot going on here. And I had so much fun. I had so much fun talking to you. There's so much stuff I still want to talk about, but we're going to have to leave that for the undiscovered country. Leave that for the future.
Yes. Also, Anita and I have already said, like, okay, the show's ending next week. We got to have some wrap-up episodes. Yeah. Hopefully we can make it work with your schedule. We can get you back on again. And once we can look back over the course of both seasons, we can advance our pet theories. We can shoot down each other's pet theories. I can give a final grade on Michael Burnham's hair for this season, which has been a consistent disappointment. Here's the hair report for this week, people. She's looking a little bit like Luke Perry with that quiff up in front. And I wasn't sure that I hated it, but I was pretty sure I did. So that's this week's hair report. I tell you what you don't get this week is a theme song, because I was too shook after the episode ended. I couldn't put my thoughts together to come up with a theme song. But I bet I come up with one over the course of the week. So I'll record it and I'll post it on Instagram or something. So stay tuned, babies. Ali, where can people find you or find your work online?
If you want to see more of my stuff, go to YouTube and check out The Psych Show. That will get you to my stuff, my videos. I've got a 3-minute video about what Star Trek means to me. So if you're into Star Trek, that's the video to check out. It's like I poured my heart and soul into that video. I think you'd like it.
That sounds fantastic. It sounds fantastic. More. All right, folks, that's it for this week. Join us next week and every week. Psych. Join us for one more week for sure, and probably a couple weeks after that, to see what's up on the USS Discovery. And if you like our show or our main show, Feminist Frequency Radio, please help us keep making them. Head over to patreon.com/femfreak to become a show backer and get access to exclusive perks. You know what else would be great? Why not rate and review the show so that it's easier for other nerds to find it? Big thanks go out to our producer, Taylor Simmons, and Sarah Norales for technical support, Ray Abelar for design and wizardry. We will see y'all next week. Goodbye.
Live long and prosper.